The winter mist had a way of swallowing Prague whole, turning the old stone bridges into floating pathways that seemed to lead nowhere. Down on the riverbank, the Vltava was slow and dark, reflecting the orange hum of the gas lamps that lined the embankments. Inside our spacious apartment, the air was warm, smelling of cinnamon, clove, and the beeswax candles my wife had lit earlier that afternoon. She was preparing for what she described as an exclusive team-building dinner for her department at the design firm. When I offered to help, she stopped me with a quick, polite smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She told me it was strictly a closed-circle affair, just her immediate team and the senior partners. She suggested I take the evening to catch a movie in the old town. Her words were gentle, but the boundary she drew was absolute. I did not argue. I trusted her completely then. I spent several hours walking the winding alleys of the lesser quarter, the cold biting through my woolen collar. When I finally returned around midnight, the guests had already left. The apartment was quiet, yet it felt charged with an unsettling energy, like the air right before a heavy storm breaks. Clara was in the kitchen, slowly washing a plate under a stream of steaming water. She was staring blankly at the tile wall, her movements mechanical and stiff. When she heard my footsteps, she flinched, a sharp, involuntary jump that she instantly tried to cover up with a tired laugh. She claimed she was just exhausted from the stress of the upcoming quarterly review. But as she reached up to put a glass on the top shelf, the sleeve of her silk blouse slipped downward. Under the soft light of the kitchen pendant, I saw it. A dark circle bruise wrapped around her forearm, just above the wrist. It was a painful sight indeed. My heart did not speed up. Instead, it grew incredibly cold. Clara was clumsy sometimes, but she did not bruise like this, and she certainly did not flinch away from me. I chose not to press her immediately. I had learned that forcing a cornered person to speak only makes them retreat deeper into their shell. I poured myself a glass of water, spoke in a quiet, comforting tone about my evening, and watched her eyes. They were very vigilant, darting toward her phone every time the screen illuminated with a silent notification. When she finally went to bed, she slept fitfully, turning away from me, her shoulders tense even in sleep. The next morning, I noticed another clue. A deleted email draft on our shared home tablet, left open in her browser history, showing a desperate, half-written message pleading with someone to respect professional boundaries. The recipient name was one I recognized instantly. Marcus, the managing partner of her own design agency office. Rage is a useless emotion when it is wild and unfocused. It clouds the mind and leads to mistakes that can never be undone. I knew that if I confronted Marcus directly, he would use his immense wealth, his legal team, and his social standing to crush us both, while Clara would be left carrying the shame and the professional ruin. I needed a different strategy, one that was silent, meticulous, and absolutely devastating. I reached out to a trusted acquaintance from my university days, a man named Lucas, who ran a private risk assessment and digital forensics firm based out of Vienna. Lucas understood the delicate nature of these situations. Over a secure line, I explained what I had seen. The physical marks, her sudden behavioral shifts, the deleted messages, and the paralyzing fear that seemed to have taken over my wife's life. Lucas did not ask any unnecessary questions. He simply agreed to assist me with this quiet and dangerous investigation right away. Over the next 6 weeks, our quiet operation began to take shape. While Clara believed I was focused on my consulting work, I was analyzing timetables, mapping out the architecture firm physical layout, and documenting every late-night meeting she was forced to attend. Lucas was able to retrieve public digital footprints and metadata that showed a consistent pattern of after-hours communication coming from the private office. We also discovered that Clara was not the first person. 2 former junior associates had left the firm abruptly over the past 3 years, signing heavy non-disclosure agreements in exchange for modest settlements. The pattern was clear and systemic. Marcus used his authority to isolate young, talented women, threatening their careers if they spoke out, and using his physical size and social power to intimidate them into absolute silence. Every piece of information we uncovered was saved, cross-referenced, and verified. I kept my emotions locked in a vault, welcoming Clara home with a warm meal. January arrived, bringing heavy snowstorms that buried the city under a thick white blanket. The quietness of Prague in the dead of winter matched the cold precision of my work. I compiled a comprehensive dossier containing time-stamped security logs from the building public garage, digital communications that bypassed the standard corporate servers, and statements from the previous associates who were finally willing to speak under the condition of absolute legal protection, which my legal counsel had quietly arranged. On a Friday evening, Clara came home looking entirely defeated, her coat damp with melted snow, her eyes hollow. She sat on the edge of our sofa, staring at the floor, her breathing shallow. I knelt down beside her, took her hands in mine, and spoke very softly. I told her that she did not have to carry the weight of this secret anymore. I reached into my desk drawer, slowly pulled out the leather-bound portfolio, and gently placed it right into her open hands. As she opened it and turned the pages, her eyes widened. She saw the timeline of the actions, the messages she thought had been permanently erased, and the legal statements from the other women. She looked at me, her lips trembling, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The wall of isolation she had built out of fear crumbled in an instant. She did not have to explain anything. The evidence spoke for her, and for the first time in months, she let her guard down and wept freely against my shoulder. The following Monday morning, our legal representatives delivered copies of the dossier to the Board of Trustees, the primary international investors who funded their projects, and the Labor Relations Authority. By noon, the board had convened an emergency meeting. Marcus was suspended from his duties effective immediately, barred from entering the premises, and stripped of his security clearance while a full and deep independent investigation was launched into his terrible corporate and personal conduct. The police were formally notified of the physical harassment claims, backed by the medical documentation and witness statements we had painstakingly compiled. Within 48 hours, his career was in absolute ruins. By April, the heavy snows had melted away, leaving the cobblestones clean and glistening under the bright spring sun. Clara began working with a counselor who helped her process the trauma of those silent months, reclaiming her professional voice with incredible strength. One quiet evening, as we sat out on our small balcony watching the boats glide along the river below, she placed her hand over mine and thanked me for choosing a quiet, protective force instead of loud anger. I smiled, looking out over the spires of Prague. True protection is not about making a scene, but about building a fortress of truth so solid that no power can tear it down, restoring peace through patient love.